Hey, look, it's some of that licensed music that YouTube can't get me for. I get an extra special Christmassy feeling deep down inside when I know I can't be sued for copyrighted music. It's the world we live in. I managed to collect a bunch of these for some reason this season. Welcome. It is Mysterious Forces Live. And that is some generic as hell Christmas music. But, as I mentioned, hey, I paid for it. Thank you, Christmas angels. Thank you so much. Welcome. It is Saturday, December 22nd. Oh my God. 3 days till Christmas. Can you believe that? That seems unreal that it's only 3 days till Christmas. I wonder what kind of plans you're making for Christmas. Tonight, I have 2 guests scheduled, and elves are working behind the scenes frantically to help our guests get linked up with the show. And it's going to be Dr. Simeon Hein and Buddy. They have a show. Excuse me. Jesus. They have a show, and it's called Reality's Edge with Doc and Buddy. And Buddy is an actor and kind of an all-around alternative research guy, and he has played the dentist on the television show Gotham. So if you have seen Gotham and you have seen the dentist, that character, that's who Buddy is. And you may think that I am unprepared on some level because I don't have a last name for Buddy. But Buddy just goes by Buddy, and he doesn't have a last name, so I am not remiss in my obligations. So while the professor and the elves work in the background to get our guests linked in, which means they could pop in anytime, which would be a great relief for you, the audience, because then I would shut up. I posted a video earlier in the week, and it was Name the Snake. And the name... I'm just trying to tune into the channel here. And the Name the Snake contest, I can see inside the chat room, I see Pursuing X. Yes. Wow. My God, there's 7,000 people in the chat room right now. That's incredible. That's incredible. Anyway, so I put up a video earlier in the week, and we have a new female Burmese python. It's a baby, but it's going to be huge. It's going to wind up being one of those big snakes that everyone is afraid of, but you know, they're kind of docile. So anyway, I just want to acknowledge some of the responses I got to the video on Name the Snake. And that is the name for the snake that was suggested is Tesla, and Out of Mind suggested that one. The name Aphrodite was thrown out by Ray Daw, and Fascination Street, Jimmy and Mika. They submitted the name Tinkerbell. And Robert Elder said Bertha, which might be more applicable 5 years from now when the snake is giant sized. Anyway, so we'll keep that up for a while, and I'll keep circulating that, and we'll see what I'll try to get a larger list of names so we have more choices. Let's see what else. I do want to talk about, I was on Fascination Street earlier today. If you're in the UK, that would have been last night. But earlier today, I made an appearance on the very first episode of Esoterica Street, which is the mashup show between Explaining Esoterica, Kelly Farmer's show, and Jimmy and Mika over in the UK, who have Fascination Street. So they do an occasional mashup show. And I was one of the guests on there. I was one of a handful of guests. And it was their Christmas special, and I was honored to be on there. So Kelly Farmer and Jimmy and Mika, thank you so much for having me on the show. I had to scramble. I been under the weather for the last 24 hours, and that's why I missed my Friday night show. I just could not do it last night. But I went to the doctor today, and I pulled it together and raced home while they were on the air, and got home and got my camera on and got everything going and was able to jump in at the last minute. So thank you, Esoterica Street, for your patience on that one. It was great. I love talking to those guys. They're all awesome. So Subscribe to their pages as well, Fascination Street and Explaining Esoterica. They're both YouTube channels. So check them out. If you like this show, you're very likely to like those shows. Those are good people. And Kelly and I are going to be meeting up on December 26th at Jimmy Church's holiday party in Hollywood, California. It's on the Sunset Strip, and it is at the famous Rainbow Bar Grill. If you have seen the documentary on Lemmy Kilminster from Motorhead, he lived very near the Rainbow. And the Rainbow is an iconic spot that has been a magnet for rock and rollers in the LA scene for decades, and has a rich history. And I'm excited to go there. I've never been there. And I'm excited about meeting Jimmy and whoever else is at the party. And of course, Kelly. And we're going to team up there, and we'll probably help each other do some segments or whatever. And I think Kelly is going to do some live streaming from the event. So be looking for Kelly Farmer and myself. We'll be providing content from inside the Fade to Black holiday party. And I promise you that it will be something to behold. And what else do I have planned? Well, as long as I'm doing shameless promotion, I will say that I'm going to interview Mark Gemini Thwaite of Peter Murphy's band, January 25th. I see an icon up. I see Alien Protocol up.
Hey, Natasha.
Yes.
Hi, Natasha.
Is it Buddy?
It is indeed.
Buddy, how are you?
Good. I had to break through the difficulty of the technological wall, but I made it through.
Yep, it's the Department of Homeland Security trying to stop us.
I feel crappy today too, but I soldiered through.
Good. I appreciate you being here so much. I appreciate it. I was giving you an introduction earlier, and I have to admit, I think because the only name I have for you is Buddy, and I watched your videos and I watched you and talk, and I don't know that much about you per se. I was wondering if you would tell the viewers a little bit about yourself, because I don't think I really had adequate information. And it's not like I didn't look. I did spend time trying to research you today, and it was difficult. Is that on purpose?
Yes, that's exactly.
Okay.
Strategy. Basically, I am I started as a creative director, and that's how I've made my income for the past, I guess, like 15 years. So I have a normal life as well, too, aside from the esoteric stuff and the UFO stuff. But basically, I started this project about a year ago, and it was based on stuff that I was experiencing up at our farm in upstate New York, which has very unusual occurrences. And I'm an experiencer from when I was a kid. About 6 years old, I had my first experience. And then around 13, I had my second sighting. And then there's a long period of time where I had no sightings, none of that stuff, until I got this farm. And then on my farm, I started experiencing some really unusual weirdness. And so started this project and wanted to try and research it and get some scientific answers and bring some science to bear on it. So I started this project, and it's really a combination of all my passions, which is, the esoteric stuff, the ESP and the powers of consciousness, and the extraterrestrial reality. So it's kind of a combination of all that stuff. It's just a natural kind of fit for me. So that's sort of my background. I've been a comedian. I've been all sorts of different things. But this is the stuff that gives me the most joy, the most fulfillment, the most sense of life purpose, all that stuff. So
right.
It's just why I do it.
Excellent. No, I like it. So is your work with Dr. Simeon Hein, is that just an occasional team up that you do with him, or what element of your project is that?
I interviewed Dr. Hein, I guess like 6 months ago, and we just had such a strong bond. We both look at this subject in a very practical, scientific sort of way. And we
Yeah, no,
both,
a video I saw of you today, I really liked it, and I liked the way that you presented your information. I wanted to give you kudos on that.
oh, thank you so much, Natasha. We really just, I think, resonate with each other. We both see the reality of this phenomenon. We both like to approach it from a really hard science kind of a perspective, but also um, bringing to the table the consciousness aspects that many people kind of are reticent to even, go to that point. Most people have who aren't involved in the subject have a great deal of difficulty just accepting the reality of extraterrestrials. And then to go that extra step with the consciousness aspect is, only the most adept kind of make that leap. And he's, 110% on that same page. He's a remote viewer also, has an amazing history and connections with, so many important people in this field and in the research. And we just had a natural connection and resonated with each other.
That's very cool. I myself am going to be attending a workshop by Alan Steinfeld in January at COSM at Alex Gray's facility, and he's doing a remote viewing workshop. I'm going to be attending that.
Oh, that's awesome. I
Are
really have just kind of, it's interesting that you mentioned Alan's name. I wasn't familiar with him up until a couple of weeks ago, and then I just started watching a bunch of his videos. And what a really cool character, and what a really kind of glorious exploration of consciousness he's been on for all these years.
Absolutely. I had a great interview with him maybe 4 or 5 episodes ago. So if you're interested in seeing what he has to say, him and I had a great conversation. And I'd like to extend that invitation to the viewers as well. If you haven't seen the interview with Alan Steinfeld, check it out because he is really deep. I really like what he does. So what I'd like to know, buddy, is did you have a difficult time reconciling this direct personal experience that you had with this intelligence versus your proclivity towards nuts and bolts hard science?
Big time, big time. They both are contradictory. When you experience something that's at the edge of your understanding, by its very definition, you don't have all the answers. And I think, humans, we want the answers. We want to know the nuts and bolts. We want to know the secrets behind things. And when I didn't understand what this phenomena was, what are these lights I'm seeing, moving through my woods that seem to be intelligently controlled, or at least following some sort of laws that maybe I don't understand. And, as you research this deeper and deeper, the rabbit hole just gets deeper. It doesn't, have an end. So it's really exciting in terms of that, because you don't have a bottom. There's a continual exploration, which excites the scientific side of me, and the esoteric side. The left and the right brain is both very enthralled by all this.
Correct. I don't know how much of your personal experience you've revealed. I did do what research I could, but, that often means, kind of skimming through material, but I did watch some stuff in depth. And I don't know how much you've really talked about your personal experience. And I'm wondering if you're willing to share a little more detail on that with the audience.
It's something I'm always reluctant to, because, it's easier to talk about the sightings that I saw with multiple other people outdoors during the day, because then it just, it's nuts and bolts. It looks like a craft. But some of the other stuff, when we've done the CE5 as our group, and we've had some very unusual experiences, it kind of treads into an area where I'm not completely sure what's happening.
Okay.
I don't have all the answers, but I will say that I've seen craft. I've seen multiple different types of light, kind of phenomena, I guess is the easiest way to pronounce it. Then there's been other light phenomena that's had structure inside of it. And we've seen this at maybe 200, 300 feet. There's a row of trees on the property that were the tops of them were burned after this one of them craft went just skimming over the tops of the trees, and we're all screaming, yelling, wow, wow, wow. We're all, the whole group's going crazy. And so I've seen stuff like that. You know, as a kid, I had an experience when I was 13 that was witnessed by, you know, a bunch of people. And so I've had a lot of different interesting experiences. I had a UFO, my first presenter kind of role at a UFO conference this summer. It was kind of a small event, the Joshua Tree Contact event with
Okay.
Rod Freeman. And at the end of it, the last day, um, I look up as I get out of a cab, and there is a craft, like, you know, 300, 400 feet up. And we start taking pictures and video and all that stuff. So I got that analyzed, 4 different analyses of that. And it's really nuts and bolts looking. And you can go to my YouTube channel and check it out. And it's a really interesting kind of bean shaped craft with some lobes on it. And I've got about 2 minutes of footage on it. And so stuff like that, it's a range of phenomena.
Yeah, it is. So since you and I are getting acquainted, and I didn't have a lot of background material to get some takes on your point of view, what is your point of view on disclosure, and what is your definition of disclosure, and what do you think that would look like?
Well, I think it's happening. You know, it's a process. It's a big meal, you know, and it's not the kind of thing you can eat all in one bite. You know, you have to have this meal in order to digest it well. You have to have it in bites. And I think, you know, we had such a dramatic event happen last year with the release of all of that information and all those videos and the To the Stars stuff and the Department of Defense videos and the Nimitz case and Go Fast. And I think we're well on our way to the process. You know, I think first it's acknowledging that this phenomenon is happening on an official level, which I think they're starting to do now. And, you know, the general population does not understand what's going on. The general population does not understand the significance that we are being visited by an advanced civilization. And that's the biggest piece of news. I mean, it should be on, you know, every single night, the top news story, you know.
Absolutely. Do you think that there's a nexus between some of the political maneuvering that we're seeing in terms of this kind of sudden formation of a space force? And there's a lot of QAnon people talking, and there's a lot of internet chatter, I suppose would be one way I would describe it, about I'm not well versed in the QAnon stuff, and I don't really follow it that closely. But there's a lot of talk about some kind of impending event, or something has happened in relationship with this phenomenon or this intelligence, and that's the reason that there's a sudden push for this. Do you think that that's happening?
I think there's a massive surge in an increase of incidents. And it's happening, especially, there's a new trend, and it's very disturbing in a way. And that trend seems to be an increase in military encounters. And not only in the military encounters, but also in the numbers of craft seen during these encounters. We're seeing fleets of UFOs where, you know, 20 years ago, it was far fewer fleets. And we're seeing time and time again, and we're hearing time and time again from military sources that they will see scores of these tumbling from space into our atmosphere, you know, from 80,000 down to, you know, 10 feet above the surface of the sea. And there's a shift going on, and there's a new trend, and it's disturbing in some ways. It's very concerning. You know, if they are here, as most people believe, trying to warn us about our own foibles and our own destruction of our own biosphere, they seem to be picking up the message rate lately. So it's very concerning.
Do you think that I know that some of my pet theories are that this is a mixture of phenomena. I think there is an element of interdimensionality going on here, and that some of these craft or some of these intelligences may be interdimensional beings or using an interdimensional mode of transport that kind of transcends the physical universe. Therefore, they can travel further distances. I think some of these things are mechanical. I think some of these things are biological. Like, I think there's a wide range of intelligence or phenomena from different sources. And that's part of why it's so hard for us to catalog all this stuff, because we're having different categories of experiences, and we're trying to put it all in this collective of ufology, when the language of ufology may not be developed enough at this point to be able to accurately portray what's going on.
I think that's a great point. Oh, I see Dr. Hein is here. Yay, Dr. Hein, my partner.
Yay.
It can be oftentimes interpreted as many different facets of the same underlying shape. So we may see different facets and think they're separate, but there could be one single underlying shape, and that one underlying shape could just be as simple as advanced technology. But Dr. Hein has a lot of interesting perspectives on the interdimensionality aspect. I'm not as interdimensional as Dr. Hein is, but he knows a lot more about those physics aspects than I.
Yes, Dr. Simeon Hein, welcome so much to the show. I'm glad that you're here.
Doc?
Hello?
Can you hear us?
Oh, we can't hear you. We can't hear Doc. Check. Wait, I heard something. I see a symbol that says your mic is off, muted. We don't hear you.
Okay, it should work now.
Yep. There's a little mixer on the side of the screen. There's an icon.
Oh, yeah. Well, I could do some puppetry of what he's saying.
Okay, yeah, that would be awesome. No, I know it.
I really respect Buddy. Buddy is incredibly handsome and talented. I'm so glad to work with him. He's incredibly muscular.
I think he was also commenting on how amazing this show is. I'm sure that I read his lips saying this show is incredible.
And I really love the visual stuff in the background. I love your orb and your flashing under the orb.
Thanks. Yeah, I put the flashing lights are for Christmas. Normally it's just the orb, but I thought I would kind of mix those two things together. Yeah. The only advice I can give Dr. Hein is that if you take your mouse all the way to the left hand of your screen, a menu may appear that you don't normally see. And I think there's a small thing that looks like an audio mixer. Should be an icon. Click on that, and then there would be another way to, or in the top right-hand corner, there might be a hidden menu that will give you an icon for your camera and your microphone. And I just saw his microphone icon pop up and go away.
Yeah, me too.
This is like being Captain Kirk and watching Spock on the other side of the glass. I want to help him so badly, but I cannot reach in there.
That is, you brought back a great scene memory.
Dr. Hein.
Hi, I'm Dr. Hein. Well, hopefully he can get the audio
going.
Yes,
hopefully. Well, it's like I don't know what to do. I'm sure the professor is going to work behind the scenes. So anyway, I don't know whether to continue to try to help Dr. Hein figure out his audio problem. Let's just continue on with the conversation, and I'll bet you he figures it out.
He is a doctor after all.
He is a doctor after all. That's right. So back to consciousness and remote viewing. Can you tell me about some of the remote viewing projects you've worked on?
Remote viewing is such an amazing phenomena, really. The fact that you can still your mind and you can do something that you rarely do in your life, separate yourself from your physical senses. And if you really get good at it, and are able to get to a place of great stillness, instead of going out searching for information, the information races to you. And it is extraordinary, and you have to experience it firsthand to truly understand what is going on here. The first time you get back a viewing that is so stunningly accurate that it defies statistics, that first one will get you so hooked.
Mm-hmm.
And you will realize the importance of this research and this exploration. There's something really incredible going on, whereby, of course, I don't have to edify your audience. I'm sure they're very educated as to, SRI and, the
Right.
20 years and millions of dollars spent by the CIA and the Department of Defense, and um, that this is a real phenomena. And the ability, like Russell Targ says, to see, as timeless, we are timeless awareness as human beings. We like to think of ourselves as these physical bodies, but we're really not. We are timeless awareness. And when you tap into this place of stillness, when you try and separate yourself from this physical body that's so cumbersome sometimes, you can be that timeless awareness and see different distant places and times and objects with stunning accuracy. And I've I'm just like a kid every time I get the results of one, especially one that does well. It's thrilling, and it's hard to explain, but that same place of stillness, that same place where you get that information, so many different things happen there.
Hmm.
It's a connection. And that connection is a two-way connection. You can use it for remote viewing, but you can also use it for healing. You can use it for all sorts of different things. So it's a connection that I think all humans should really be taught about at a really young age. That their intuition is a lot more powerful than they ever suspected.
Absolutely. And not to name drop Alan Steinfeld too much in this episode, but that's something that him and I talked about. And we talked about the thread of consciousness that kind of works its way throughout the manifest universe and through dimensions, across dimensions and across time. And that tapping into that thread of consciousness itself was kind of the root causality of our existence, that everything comes from that consciousness through that thread that intersects through everything.
We like to think that it's like a material, physical world, and that where consciousness is a separate entity from it. But when you really think about it, matter has absolutely no meaning if there's not a consciousness to perceive it. And you can't have consciousness without matter. And so I think our universe really isn't just matter and energy and all those things. It's a tapestry, an interweaving of consciousness and matter, and that they interact and they create the reality that we experience. And we've been under the mistaken belief that it's just a physical, material, nuts and bolts universe, but it's not. It's interwoven with consciousness. And because matter and space and energy is combined with consciousness, you can tap into that and tap into the matter. And that's why psychokinesis and the ability to affect random number generators and other experiments and studies that they've done for
Mm-hmm.
many years and have proven healing, the ability of the prayer to help heal. And it's stunning, it's mind-blowing to me still, and I've been deep in this for many years.
Yeah, no, I can tell from your language and your description that you're well versed in the field. Do you think humanity may evolve to a point where we will accept these direct observations of consciousness as scientific evidence? Do you think that we will hone the skill uh, to the point where we can strongly rely on it when it comes to, I don't know, investigating phenomena or even medical issues or any other wide variety of things connected to our bodies and our consciousness?
I think in some ways, yes, but in some ways, technology is recreating these powers of consciousness. Before 100 years ago, the only way to see on the other side of the world was through remote viewing, or to take a plane or whatever. But now you can go on your computer and tap into a webcam and see on the other side of the world, hear on the other side of the world, speak to people on the other side of the world. You can gain information that, you could only get a limited amount at your public library, 20 years, when I was a kid. So in a way, technology is recreating these powers of the mind. And maybe um, you know, I would like to think that we would all evolve as humans more, and we would tap into this ability more. But I think in some ways that with technology recreating it, it may even weaken our ability. So I don't know. I'm really unsure of the future in terms of that stuff.
Yeah, I mean, because it seems that there's also kind of a push. Artificial intelligence gets a lot of press, and it is what it is. But beyond that, I think we're a lot further ahead in terms of wetware and integrating circuits into our physical bodies and expanding our mental capacity through that. There seems to be a lot of interest in that. And now that we have this technology with CRISPR coming about, and then you have this guy in China, the scientist that manipulated human DNA successfully. And, you know, he's probably just the first person to admit that he's done that. I'm sure there have had to have been generations of secret scientific units that are sequestered away somewhere, and they've been manipulating DNA this whole time. What's your take on the whole CRISPR technology? Do you think we're headed towards wetware?
I think we are. I think we're headed into some really interesting and frightening areas. With the ability to, it crosses into this eugenics kind of arena, and but you can't stop progress. You can't stop people wanting to improve themselves, or to live longer, or to be smarter, or to have smarter kids, or things like that. It's frightening technology to me, but I think when you play, I think God plays God better than we can.
Mm-hmm.
But so I'm very scared of humans having this power, especially because it won't go to an altruistic group of intellectuals who are rationing this stuff out. It's going to go to corporations, and they're going to have very privatized desires, and who knows what that could mean for the general population. So it's frightening. We have to keep an eye on this technology, and we have to like with artificial intelligence, we have to be in control ultimately, and it takes people being involved in the topic and caring about it.
Do you think that a lot of this technology or research in general has been shifted over into the private sector, where it can be more easily hidden away from the public and taken away from the transparency? Sometimes that's often a requirement of FOIA requests and things like that. How can we penetrate through that steel wall of the corporations?
I think it's going to take people who are like hackers and stuff like that, to be honest. People like the Aaron Schwartzes, who fought for internet freedom and information freedom, more importantly.
Yes.
About getting data. We should, as human beings, it should be our birthright to have information and data.
Oh, was that Dr. Hein?
I think so. I thought I heard him.
I thought I heard something. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
Oh, no, not at all. I think, there's a lot of implications to this stuff, and it's frightening, and we have to really eyeball it. We have to, because the corporations are not going to have the general populace's best interest at heart. They're going to have their own corporate, interests at heart. What's
really disheartening to me is, and I've said many times on this show, I don't do left and right politics on this show. I feel like that's a distraction. But I worry much in the same way you do about this technology. And you would think that what might help curb some of this would be some kind of governmental regulation or oversight, which would seem reasonable. But when you see the Senate hearings and they're questioning Mark Zuckerberg and other heads of other tech companies, the politicians themselves are so ignorant of modern technology and how computer technology generally works and how it is integrated so deeply into every facet of our existence, at least in terms of, living in a community. If you're off the grid, it's a different story. But they are completely out of touch. How can these people who don't even understand the depth of the technology construct legislation that would protect us from the harms that could come from this kind of technology being used in the wrong way?
It's such a great point. And It's a really salient point, and it's a scary, frightening point, especially when you think about, the people and the general public don't have lobbyists. The corporations have lobbyists that change the laws. It's very difficult for the average person to change the laws. Hey, Doc, is that you? Are you there?
I hear a noise once in a while.
I do too. It's like we have mice in the house.
Hey, can you guys hear me?
Yes, Doc. Yeah.
Yay. Ah.
Hey, what's going on?
Hi, Doc.
Dr. Simeon Hein, welcome to the show. Welcome to the conversation.
Hey, guys. Yes, we did it. We pulled off a technological breakthrough and we actually communicated.
Awesome.
Yeah. Hey.
So do you want to do a brief introduction, or do you just want to jump into the conversation where we were at? It's your choice.
No, I don't need any introduction. I've been listening. It's very interesting. What you're talking about is this concept of technological lag. Alvin Toffler wrote a book about this called Future Shock a long time ago.
Yes.
You remember that book?
Yes.
Mm-hmm, I do.
Yeah, it's kind of like, that's what started me in all this, guys, before UFOs and everything, was Alvin Toffler. And he basically said, you would not understand the world you're living in anymore. It would get so complex, no one would understand what's going on. That's the gist of what I think you're talking about. And I think that's where we're at. And I think every day it's getting worse. It's getting worse by the day. Just look at what's going on in the past week politically. No one knows what's going on anymore. And you throw this UFO stuff into the mix. I mean, you just got to love it. The universe has a way of just making sure you don't catch up. And that's what we see going on right now, is you think you're getting ahead, but you're actually moving backwards because things are so complex that no one really understands, what's going to happen next. So it's very exciting in some ways. But I mean, I agree with the gist of what you guys are saying is CRISPR technologies, this genetic modification. We don't know what we're doing with all this. We have no clue. And one day you will wake up and see what you've been dealing with, and it's something very different than you thought you were dealing with.
Yeah, I think so. I am interested in your point of view on the interdimensionality of the UFO phenomenon, because we were in the meat of that topic, and I really want to hear your take on that.
Yeah, I think that's actually at the heart of the whole thing, is if you're dealing with an interdimensional phenomena, and Buddy and I have been taught in our show, which is these new multidimensional theories of reality, which suggest that parallel realities could interact with our own. It's coming out of physics now. We're not talking about paranormal metaphysics. We're talking about physicists publishing papers saying that we can realities. They don't say they understand what that would look like, but they're saying the models suggest that could be happening. I don't think that our mindset is even capable of dealing with that phenomena right now. Just imagine, I mean, how challenged we are dealing with our own. Well, we've been talking about, you guys have been talking about politics and stuff. I mean, how challenged we are just dealing with our own president. Do you think we're capable of dealing with parallel realities? Because the way it would show up would be something beyond your vocabulary. You would barely know how to talk about it, and you'd end up calling it paranormal.
No, I agree. I wholeheartedly agree. Do you think that the average citizen is going to be left on their own in terms of figuring this out and how to protect themselves, or how to adapt to and I don't want to toss this cliche out lightly, but this is a new world order. Literally, this is a manifestation of a new world order, as called out previously by Bush Sr. And here we are, and it's like you're saying, people don't even really understand it. Are people going to group together and share information and share ways to protect ourselves or insulate ourselves in some way from this? Or are we going to have to figure out how to master this technology and eventually learn how to use the system against itself in some unforeseen way that we can't know at this time?
No, it's a really good question. And there are a lot of different scenarios. And I have to say that, if Buddy and I can help it, people are not going to be left alone to deal with this on their own. That's what's motivating us to do this. And, Buddy was talking a few minutes ago about getting involved with remote viewing. I mean, talk about a mind-blowing experience. You're going to come across something you didn't even believe was possible. And there you are drawing the target picture without having seen the target. It's half an hour in your future and you're drawing it perfectly. I've done it too. And when I took my first class in 96, I thought, what is going on here? I didn't believe this was possible an hour ago. And yet here I am. So you need inoculation against the unknown. You know what I mean? In a good way, so that you realize it's your friend. And we've all been conditioned to be afraid of the unknown, to be afraid of things that are different. And that's what we have to work on here, is to educate the public to realize that there are a lot of resources we're going to come across which are neat and interesting and potentially beneficial. So if we react out of fear, we'll get a negative outcome from all this. But kind of like what you're saying a little bit, if we kind of band together, and we have all the technology to do this now. Look what's going on right here. We can talk amongst each other and realize that we don't need all those institutions and bureaucracies and organizations. They haven't been helping us. Those institutions benefit from people being afraid, because then they can say, we can protect you, right? Mm-hmm. But they can't protect from the universe because it's too big and it's coming at you from a lot of directions. You have to educate yourself into how it really works. So this discussion of RV is really appropriate here, because that's how it started for me to come across something I didn't think was possible, and yet got to know it. And now I teach it. It's fun. Buddy's been involved with it for a long time. So we can do it, but it takes some work. It takes some work.
What would be the first step for the average viewer out there? What would be the first step they could take to empower themselves and to mitigate some of that fear that they're encountering with everything that's going on? Maybe in terms of technology. I mean, that was a broad question. Maybe in terms of their privacy, or in terms of their own personal well-being, or for their family. What can the average person do?
Well, I would say the first thing they should do is educate themselves. I think you can't just trust that it's being taken care of. You can't just trust that other people are watching your back. You can't just trust that other people are doing the right thing. And, if we're going to unleash the cliches, I'm going to bust one out now. Evil only survives when good people do nothing. And, we must be involved. We must educate ourselves. We must realize that we're not really living in a democracy. We're living in more of an oligarchy. And in order for the people to have their wishes and desires and hopes and dreams heard, they have to, lobby. They have to, organize.
Right. Advocate for themselves.
Absolutely. And educate, like what you're doing, having a show, and what we're doing. And, if you can't change the system single-handedly, the least you can do is help to educate the public.
No, absolutely. And yeah, that is it. And that's, part of my mission with this show is to just help introduce these ideas to people, and not necessarily, I have definitely strong opinions about different aspects of ufology, but in general, I want to put a lot of information out there, and I want people to be able to be empowered and be helped. And before we work completely through this topic, Dr. Hein, I'd like to ask you what I asked Buddy. What is your definition of disclosure, and what do you think true disclosure looks like?
Now, that is a really good one, and it's something I've thought about a lot. See, well, most of the time when we think about disclosure, we're thinking about the government telling us something that maybe they know a lot about, and it's going to come out in an announcement, all at once. And that's one possibility. And then there's others, Grant Cameron, he thinks it's kind of more of a slow disclosure. The government's never going to say anything. But there's actually a third disclosure. It's an internal disclosure about who you really are. And that is the toughest one, I think. And I'm not saying to impose any idea on that. I'm just saying maybe we're not what we thought we were. We're something else in a good way. And not to be afraid of discovering what that is. And that, to me, is a type of disclosure. And Buddy's alluding to it. It's getting to know your abilities better, and, how you relate to the cosmos. in an unfiltered way. And again, we're educated from a young age to somehow be afraid of that. But I think that's the most important disclosure, because if you're not ready to face yourself, how are you going to face an ET that you've never had any experience with before consciously, and nobody in school ever told you about? From kindergarten to PhD, nobody ever talked about this seriously. In fact, it was ridiculed. So that is like an even more of an extreme type of situation. But the first step is you need to be able to deal with yourself. Then, you know, people want to go straight to the ET disclosure. So a lot of people want that to happen tomorrow. But I think if we're not ready for it, people could just react in a, you know, again, out of a sense of fear, not knowing what's going on. So I think, I'm not saying this kind of in a, you know, a philosophical way. I'm quite serious. Like, RV is something that gets you to know yourself a lot better, because it shows you have this etheric sensory ability that nobody ever told you you had, but it's there. And it's those sorts of things, I think, that is my sense of disclosure too. Now, I'm all in favor of the larger disclosure. I mean, look, we're the ones that are responsible for the government ultimately, because we're the citizens, we pay for it. It's really our government. But that, I think the other side's been neglected too, which is the internal disclosure. So I see two, one on the outside, one on the inside.
Do you think we face an interesting dichotomy in that ancient traditions of consciousness, meditation, yoga, Kundalini yoga, these practices that have helped people discipline their minds, their bodies, and hone their consciousness, and then interface those ancient traditions with this new technology? And do you think, and once again, not to be cheesy or to toss out a cliche, but could that actually be the definition of this new age that everyone wanted to talk about in the last half of the 20th century? This new age where these ancient practices involving consciousness meet the new technology to create a third reality, a third way of perceiving the universe?
Yeah, well, that's an interesting way to put it. I mean, those sorts of practices, I like to err on the side of giving people as much choice as possible and not telling them what to do. I've done TM meditation for a couple decades now. I mean, I learned it as a teenager, and that was like a long time ago. I'm not saying people should do that, but for me, it's been very helpful. Other sorts of mindful practices, everyone has to find the one that works for them the best. But those practices, I think, really help because they connect you to reality in a way that is, again, more direct without all the filters. And so I would agree with that. I think that's very helpful, but I'm not going to say which particular practice is
right.
Spiritual competitiveness. You have to choose your own, but yes, I think it helps. I think it helps.
And I think in some ways we're finding our greater sense of power. You know, I think we're finding within ourselves that we really do create reality. And that is a powerful, powerful lesson and tool and knowledge to have. And in some ways, governments don't want us to know how powerful our minds are, how we do have the ability to affect reality around us. And if people come together as groups, and I was part of Occupy Wall Street, and there's a great sense, especially the first couple of weeks, of this great sense of community, and the people really have the power. But the people really have the power on an even deeper level than we ever suspected, and that we need to claim that. And I think that people don't want us to claim that. It sounds conspiratorial that maybe the government doesn't want us to access the powers of our subconscious mind, but maybe that's more true than we think, because if we have the ability to see anything, we could see the launch codes for nuclear weapons. We could see all sorts of things that governments wouldn't want us to have. But we live at a time where technology is getting more and more dangerous as time passes, and fewer people can do greater and greater damage with less and less. And the only thing that's going to prevent, a cataclysm in the future from one lone wolf is a sense of transparency, an ability to see timelessly, to have other people see what our thoughts are. And I think if you're not doing anything wrong, transparency is a beautiful thing. And, you know, the government always wants to know all of our information. Well, now you have the ability to know the government's information. You know, I think transparency is a beautiful thing for both sides. And I think in many ways it might be our saving grace into the future.
Absolutely, I think, and I think part of that transparency also comes from local media, which we've lost when the small and mid-sized towns started losing their local newspaper. That was their connection to local reporting. I mean, you know, the county commission can make some wacky decisions about what you can do and can't do in your county that has nothing to do with the federal government. But if you don't have a local newspaper to read, if you don't trot your butt down to the courthouse, you're not really going to know what decisions they're making on your local level. And then you take that on the macro level where the paths of politics are so convoluted and so confusing. The average person who is trying to work 40 hours a week and pay their mortgage and make sure that their kids have health care, they do not have time to follow the details of that circus. They put all of their faith and all of their hope in these people who are supposed to be representing the common good. And obviously we see what we have, and it's corrupt on the left and the right. I'm not even taking a side in that. I think our political system is kind of rotten from the inside out. And do you think, shifting gears away from that, do you think that remote viewing can be used as a tool for disclosure, and not so much perhaps digging through government secrets, but making direct contact with these intelligences through remote viewing and establishing some kind of rapport through that?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think, you know, consciousness and the ability to tap into that kind of place of stillness is a great it's a great communicator on many different levels. It's not just an ability to connect to different time and spaces. It's literally to connect to other beings as well. And I think that's why it's always been connected with the extraterrestrial phenomena. From the very beginning of remote viewing, whether you try and separate the two, you almost can't, because they're drawn to each other. And you know, a lot of this could be aspects of our own psychology as well, too. We would like to believe that an ultra-advanced civilization is more telepathic, more, you know, elevated in all these different ways. And there's a lot of different factors that all converge in this conversation, you know, from the psychology aspect of it, too, to the real, you know, desires of communicating with another species, you know, or another civilization, to reflecting on ourselves. You know, the phenomena is kind of like love in a strange way. It's a great mirror on ourselves. We're able to see ourselves through different perspectives, and that's always a valuable opportunity.
Dr. Hein, what's your take on that?
Yeah, it's funny, for all the talk that we usually have every day for those of us interested in the subject, I don't think the ET contact is the most important thing right now. It is more what RV teaches you, which is that you're an omniscient being that spans space and time. That's a big one for a lot of people. I mean, think about that. We are not brought up to think about ourselves that way. And if you push it too far, it'd seem like, you know, you're crazy or something. But
right.
The more important thing is to get in touch with our true inner nature. And again, not, you know, when you do RV, it's a very practical thing. I'm not talking about in some abstract philosophical sense. It's just that, like, I'll give you an example. When the average person has dreams and things at night, you're taught by psychology and neuroscience that those are just the neurons firing, or it's just some sort of idle, you know, activity in the brain. But what about when those dreams turn out to be precognitive and you actually had a dream about something that does that say about how the universe is interconnected? I'm not saying I totally understand it, but those of us who've been involved in RV see that there's something a lot bigger going on. And the amount of silence you get from mainstream science about this is kind of, too, it's almost like you can't talk about it. it's always put in this category of paranormal, as if it's not reality, right? Something else.
Right. Woo-woo stuff.
Woo-woo. But let's say if the woo-woo was the reality and all this other stuff that we take to be real turned out to be ephemeral and not really that important in the long run, just kind of transient.
Right. I mean, what's more fake than money? The idea of money. That's the most fake ass idea in the history of ideas.
It's just a social agreement, and it can change. Yes. And societies have different concepts of money. There's societies that are more communitarian about it. It's just an agreement. But those agreements change over time. What we're talking about is something that doesn't change, that the way it really works. And any of these phenomena suggest to us, precognition and presentience and a lot of other phenomena that have a lot of evidence that show that they've been around for a long time. And then scientists have been studying them for a good 100 years or so. Suggest that the entire model of the way things work is different than what we've been taught. I mean, we're talking about different in a big way. And yet you don't have a discussion about this. All of these topics are just like not talked about, just not even just UFOs and stuff. I mean, serious discussions. You don't have talks about why people could have precognition. And everyone has had, listen, here's the thing. Everyone's had some experience of this in their life at some point, or knows a relative. Like you picked up the phone and you knew who it was. I'm talking before the days of caller ID. Or yes. You made a call to a relative or someone, and it just turned out that there had been some serious incident in the family or a death. Everyone has had that sort of experience at some point or had it themselves. And yet we don't have any discussion in society about what that is. Now, those of us who've been involved in RV have some sense of what that is because we actually practice this with an attempt to kind of create a non-local connection to another place or even something in the future or something like that. But for the average person who hasn't had the training, they don't know what that is. And then they don't really talk about it. They don't bring it up. Now, people like Buddy and myself, and I imagine you too, when you encounter this, you encourage people to talk about this, right? You want to hear about it, right?
But right, absolutely.
Yeah, because it's showing that this is fascinating. And what is it? I've heard too many stories like this now to know that it's just a haphazard sort of thing. I think this is actually how the universe is stitched together. But we really don't understand, exactly how it works. But we have all the data to show that it's there. And to me, the real big mystery is how come science doesn't actually want to tackle that. Why do they take people like Russell Targ and Hal Puthoff and others who did so much research at SRI and keep trying to marginalize it when, it's just done to the best standards you could do. So that's the mystery to me. Why do we not? That's it, really. Why don't we want to disclose? What is it about us that wants to hold back? What do we think we're holding on to? That's the question.
I think it might be the simple answer just might be materialism in the economy that, and a term that I like that I've used for a long time is self-actualization. And I think that that's an element of disclosure, that the withholding of information, of this critical information, is preventing the average person from achieving full self-actualization. And I think that ties in with the concept that Richard Dolan puts out of the breakaway civilization, that this breakaway civilization, aka deep state, aka whatever else you want to call it, when they have access to information and technology, that gives them an edge over everyone else. And it does tie into what we were talking about earlier in this kind of eugenics kind of a thing, that when you have access to these higher levels of, it could be healthcare, but levels of consciousness, knowledge about those levels of consciousness, and then a broader knowledge of our true connection with perhaps alien intelligences, that gives you one hell of an edge over everyone else that you're competing with and helps assure your place at the top of the social structure and keeps you above that. And I think that those people just want to protect themselves. That being said, everything you have just said, and I'd like to hear from both of you on this, that I can't help but ask, is Carl Jung's collective unconscious, the language of archetypes? Is that part of the language of remote viewing? Is that part of what a lot of people will encounter? Is that an element to this, or does the language of this imagery tend to be very individualistic and less iconic, so to speak?
Wow. That's a pretty deep and intense question. It's, you know, that question kind of stymies me in a lot of ways. I think we haven't completely owned our consciousness, so it's hard to gauge, you know, in a lot of ways. Doc, what do you think?
Well, the RV experience shows us that we have a level of awareness that, you know, transcends our, you know, ego, our, you know, sense of space and time that we identify with our personality, you know, the sense of who we are, of a lifetime of, you know, 80 to 100 years, and the identity we have. It shows there's something, another aspect of our consciousness. Now, whether that directly connects to Carl Jung's idea of the collective unconscious, I'll tell you where that does come up is in the system that Buddy and I both learned to do RV involves these thing called ideograms. And these ideograms, you know, not making it too complicated, are kind of like a holographic written system that allows you to start identifying the target that you're looking at the moment. Now, what we do find is that people have very similar ideograms for different types of things, you know, mountains or people or biological, you know, matter. The ideograms tend to be rather similar. That's what I've noticed from being involved with this for a while. So that sort of suggests that perhaps of the way that we're, you know, built biologically, that we sort of express information in similar ways. So there is some link to that. There are a lot of different interpretations of this. You could equally go into kind of Eastern way of looking at it, a Taoist or a Buddhist way of looking at things, and saying that you don't have subjects without objects. You don't have separation. You know, I think that's what we could say, is that it shows us you don't have the separation. When you look at yourself in the mirror, you sort of see this body that looks like it's separate from the surroundings. But what RV and all these other phenomena seem to suggest, and maybe that's one of the deeper messages here of the whole thing, is that at another level, you don't have that separation. And I think that's probably what Jung was attempting to say in his own way, too.
It's kind of an exciting message that we literally are connected to everything in the universe.
Yeah.
It's kind of comforting to know that we are literally connected to everything. And it's not just in terms of remote viewing where you can see, but you can physically affect. If you want to get into a more area of even more controversy within this realm, it's like psychokinesis. They've had many studies on psychokinesis and done under empirical, you know, laboratory protocols. And they've proven time and time again that the mind has an ability to affect physical reality. So when you take that beyond just consciousness and into the fact that we do live in this interwoven tapestry between matter and consciousness, and that you're not alone. Your consciousness literally connects to everything. You are connected to everything. There is an underlying something, you know, whether you call it the Akashic record or Dr. Vernon Nepi calls it the Gimel, a consciousness field that he's done the volumetrics for, some very elaborate mathematics. You can call it all sorts of different, you know, names. But there is this thing that connects us all, and that's a wonderful thing when you really think about it.
You know, I had an idea while the both of you were talking. It was literally an epiphany right here, right now. And that is that, you know, when I ask you about the collective unconscious, and I have always tended to think of that and I hadn't thought of it till now. In terms of computing, it would be like the cloud, right? It would be this thing that is not physically connected, yet accessible, right? That all the data is there. But as the both of you were talking, I was wondering, perhaps it's the absolute reverse. Maybe it's not this disconnected thing that's up in this cloud, but perhaps that is part of the information that's stored in our DNA. And that when you combine consciousness with a direct link to DNA, that is really the data bank that we're tapping into, our own DNA, rather than some discarnate other.
I think that's a very astute observation.
It's kind of interesting because I did ask Ingo Swann about that when I met him down in 2013 near his flat on Bowery there. And I said, Ingo, how does this all work? Why does it work? And he said, it has something to do with what's called junk DNA or dark DNA, you know. There's some genetic component. And I never could follow up with him on that because he passed away about a week later. And we were going to meet. And I wanted to ask, I really wanted to get into it. That's what we have from, you know, one of the best RVers anyone's ever known, that there's a genetic component. So you might be right about that, because I think Ingo believed that. And there's certainly 98% of our DNA is still really has an unknown function, and it's referred to as junk. But I mean, that's a kind of derogatory term. I mean, you won't want to refer to anything in yourself that's junk. I mean, kind of
Right.
a deeply tuned system. It works so well. I mean, here we are day after day. I'm amazed that it works at all for anybody, but nature sort of knows what it's doing. So I wouldn't refer to it that way. But yeah, maybe it has a DNA component. I mean, it's a really good question. There's just a lot we don't know.
I have to be honest with you. I did not come into this conversation with you carrying that concept with me. That it was a genuine epiphany as I listened to the both of you talk. It just came to mind. So maybe it's an idea worth me further exploring, or anyone else that caught on to the concept. Maybe it's just something to consider.
But, you know, I've heard people talk about DNA as an actual antenna in and of itself. And so that kind of ties into your theory as well there, you know, that the DNA could be part of this receptor system that allows us to tap into this tapestry, this interweaving that we consider ourselves separate from, but is completely accessible to our minds. It's exciting. You know, I think if you really look at this topic, it's exciting. You know, you can't look at it and not feel like, wow, the universe is more dynamic than we ever thought. And I think it's really exciting, and it thrills me every day.
So if the two of you were to kind of put your heads together right here live on the air and describe what your work is and what your goals are in this work, take all the time you want to explain it and lay it all out for us. What are you guys doing, and what do you hope to achieve?
Well, I would just say two words: explore and educate. You know, ultimately, I'm no master in anything. I'm just an enthralled student. But from what I've learned, I'd love to share that. I'd love to hear what other people have and to grow and learn together. And that's basically it. You know, I think Doc and I come from a perspective of rationalism. You know, we would like to bring science to bear on these topics. And so we think that we can really reach a lot of people in a way that others can't. You know, we would like to educate. We've been educated by really great minds, and we just want to pass the baton on and continue the exploration into these crucial topics.
Do you think that'll play out through perhaps doing workshops or going to different events and doing some on-site interaction with other students?
It's a combination. I think it's everything. I think, you know, every day that I'm existing and interacting with people, there's an education process going, and it's a two-direction education process. And your show is part of that process. And there's a lot of progressive shows that are part of this really important education process. That, like Doc was saying, you're not going to get this in school. You're not going to get this crucial information about your mind and your life and your abilities in college or in high school. You have to search it out yourself, and you have to get it from sources like you and us and people who are presenting it in a, you know, a rational way.
Dr. Hein, what's your take?
Well, you know, it's a good question. I've been involved with teaching people remote viewing. I call it resonant viewing because think the information is really remote. I mean, Ingo had to call it that because it sounded good for funding, you know, remote viewing. But it's not really a remote process because it's like radio waves. It's right there. It's next to you. You have to tune into it. So I've been involved in teaching people this for a couple decades. And what that has taught me is that it's not that you need to learn more. You need to strip away the propaganda that you were about of who you think you're supposed to be. Because what we're talking about here are all very natural processes that are free, that the universe built into you, perhaps genetically, perhaps other ways, a whole bunch of different ways. It's already there. So I think the exciting thing I've learned from being involved in this journey, you know, since getting involved with RV in '96 and all these other cool subjects that are associated with it, is information in. You just need to subtract the BS, and this stuff naturally comes through. And it's really just a matter of taking away and recognizing how much propaganda you've been exposed to from a lot of these institutions were around. I know a lot of them probably thought they were doing their best for us, but you're actually getting programmed with very old information that's not even really accurate anymore. And a lot of it's really questionable. So it's really more subtracting than adding in. But when you do that, then you really see a lot of really cool stuff. I mean, this RV thing was a huge surprise, but obviously that was just the beginning, because the next thing, as Buddy's mentioning, is, okay, how does RV help us understand the UFO phenomena? And then you find out doing research that the government's been concerned with the same thing, only they didn't tell anybody because they wanted you to think they were out of the UFO business ever since 1968 or 9. But now we find out that they're not. In fact, they're really curious about how all this works too. So this is actually, to me, getting back more in touch with reality. And I guess that's why Buddy and I call it kind of reality's edge, because it has an edge to it, but it's the way it really works. And that's what's really exciting about all this. So to answer your question, we don't really know where this is going. And I think that's the best part, is let the whole thing show you where it's going instead of determining ahead of time. That has really been the challenge this whole time for all of us, is we've been around these institutions that have agendas and they think they're going to turn you into a human being. You know, it's like that Genesis song, Supper's Ready. Remember that one? Yes. We're going to turn you into, you're already fine. The universe already did a great job producing. You're great just the way you are. But it's just a matter of tuning into all the good stuff that's already there, instead of someone telling you that you need to become something else. You don't need to become something else. That's what RV taught me. So where is this going? We don't know exactly, but I think, as Buddy's saying, if we stick to the evidence of what we've learned from all these so-called paranormal phenomena, is that they're not really paranormal after all. If we just stick to the evidence, it'll sort itself out. It's really just a matter of telling the truth, in my view. And that's something you don't really get very much anymore from these media sources that a lot of people listen to.
That's beautiful. I just want to say, I love so much what you just said. You articulated it so clearly that I am going to go back and listen to this later, because it's great. I just like the way you guys laid it out. And I really admire your messaging and your approach to this message and your outlook on this. This afternoon, while I was researching your show, I gained a lot of respect for you guys, and it made me really want to talk to you tonight. And I'm so glad that we did. For either one of you, do you have any projects coming up in 2019, appearances, books, any kind of thing that you want to plug for yourself, to let people know maybe where to find you on social media or how to interact with you through any other means?
Well, we're doing our show Reality's Edge, which we're really excited about, and we're having incredible guests lined up, some real legendary names coming up. And so that's really exciting. And you can see us on YouTube on that. And, you know, I have my Alien Protocols channel, and we'll be continuing to do projects. We're involved in a couple projects right now. I can't really come out and talk about them too much, but our advanced protocol project is to go to UFO hotspots with night vision, live stream, and scientific equipment. And we're hoping to initiate that this year. So that should be fun as well. So lots of good things coming and explorations.
That's awesome. Dr. Hein, what do you have going on?
Well, I really like people to get in touch with this directly, not just theoretically like we're talking. It's fine. Actually experience it themselves. So we have a live resonant viewing class coming up in Boulder, Colorado, where I teach it March 15th through 17th. We'll be actually going through the CRV system, teaching it. And I always enjoy doing those live classes because it's amazing to see people come in and do what they've been told is impossible, but describe a target you won't be shown for 15 minutes, 20 minutes, half an hour. So that's one way people can participate and learn something directly. I mean, with me. Also, I do these crop circle tours in the UK in July. So if people want to come along and see crop circles and the stone circles, and possibly, I can't guarantee this, but see your cameras and watches and batteries stop working when we go into crops. I have seen that so many times. I think about it every day. Why do those patterns in the wheat do that? But if you want to see it for yourself, come along with me in July. And of course, you know, you can listen to our show. Buddy and I go through this. You couldn't stop us going through this stuff. This is what we do. This is what we do. We bring people, and there's a lot of ways to do it. Of course, Buddy talking about CE5, it's another very cool way to make contact is to do a CE5 protocol and see what you get. So.
Absolutely. Dr. Hein, where do people go to sign up for your classes and your workshops?
You can go to resonantviewing.org.
Awesome. Resonantviewing.org.
Resonantviewing.org, or my blog where I post new stuff. And we've done a lot of cool, I got to tell you, we've done some very cool UFO witness interviews in the past week that are still pretty amazing to me. People from the military, one Army guy, one Air Force guy, and one Navy guy. The stuff these guys have seen. Anyway, that is all posted on newcrystalmind.com, and you can connect to my YouTube channel there where I post all of this information and so forth.
And we'll also provide links below. So Buddy and Dr. Simeon Hein, please consider yourselves friend of this show, and you're welcome to come back anytime. I would love to have another conversation with you. This was fabulous, and I hope that the viewers out there enjoy this conversation as well.
Really loved it. Thank you so much.
We'll talk to you.
Awesome. Thank you. Now, what are we going to have? We're going to have the happy music. That's right. It's where we say good night and happy holidays. So, catch me and Kelly Farmer from Explaining Esoterica and Esoterica Street. We're going to be at the Fade to Black party at the Rainbow Bar and Grill in Hollywood, California on December 26th, and we will communicate with you from there. We have incredible things coming up in January. I'm going to be doing a remote viewing workshop with Alan Steinfeld at COSM, which is the Chapel of Sacred Mirrors, which is the facility put together by Alex and Allison Gray. We're going to be interviewing Mark Gemini from Peter Murphy's band in January. They're going to be playing a show here, doing a Bauhaus retrospective. And then, of course, the trip to Area 51 that we're going to be planning for late March. Thank you for watching. Subscribe, like, share. Thank you for your time. Happy holidays, everyone, and take care.